either or, but do you think that it will end up replacing to an extent the XBOS type paper that we have at Rutgers, or
I do. I think I think it will, and I think it should.
it should? Okay.
Which is and that's not, it's different from saying writing is going to go away, right? That's not the case. I actually, I mean, where we started was to say we want to focus in on what it is that we value in writing. Why do we want students to write papers? Why is XPOS a required course? We're challenging students to articulate their thinking, demonstrate that, how their ability to think connectively through an idea. That doesn't go away. That's the thing that we value. That's what we want people to be doing at the academy, period, right? That's what you do across all disciplines, across your 4 years at school and beyond. That's you're training this kind of thinking that we're talking about. But that doesn't only happen through text.
So I don't see it. I don't see it as an either or.
Okay.
I see it as essential for your generation that it's a both and.
Both and.
Because on the other side of college, it's I think it's fair to say that literacy is for your generation is going to require a facility in working with images and sound as well as text. So as a teacher, that's why I teach both. In terms of literacy, the challenge is identical. And learning to read images with a level of sophistication and care is analogous to learning how to read text with a level of sophistication and care. And I haven't really found people who totally excelled at the visual and couldn't do text at all. The more general experience is that people have very little experience of writing about ideas that they're actually invested in thinking about. That's the real challenge for me.
Yeah.
Rather than text and image, it's to say, you've come to college. I think the one residue of the information scarce paradigm is to say, I have to teach you how to make arguments.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to organize the scarce amount of information. If you're lucky, you'll find a piece of information that nobody else has, and then you'll have an argument. And my own feeling is that we train people to argue in advance of having them become thoughtful or curious. And in advance of teaching them that any kind of genuine research involves encountering your own ignorance and recognizing that you're wrong. So for me, the shift has been from the text-based culture has so much pressure on argumentation right out of the gate, and I'm much more interested in using the composing process as a vehicle for arriving at an argument eventually. But that involves a lot of exploration, and the web makes it, there's no excuse for not exploring. The library is open 24 hours a day, right?
I kind of agree with what you're saying. I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that I think that there's some good that comes from the mental gymnastics of producing the 5 to 7 page essay, even though that form doesn't exist anywhere outside of the classroom. So I would say that what we're doing in the classroom doesn't necessarily have to model what you're going to be doing once you get outside of the classroom to serve a purpose. And that there's a purpose to be served in writing an extended piece that makes you develop an argument and a train of thought over several pages or over 15 pages if you're in a seminar, and that there's a good to working your brain in that kind of way, and that if we simply decide within the academy not to require that kind of work, the result will be a loss of something that's potentially important about a way of thinking, a sustained way of thinking. So that would be one thing of the assignment. So I'm not going to stop assigning the 7-page essay or the 15-page.
Also, I think you're hitting key points, right? And you're asking key questions. But I think, for me at least, some of these, when we talk about what we're going to lose or what's going away as we move to this, as we move more towards digital media, people idealize the thought process of the author, or what goes into writing a paper, and it's understandable, and I think it's common for students to think, well, when a professor writes a book, he sits around for a couple of years with his thoughts in his head, and then basically just regurgitates them onto the page. That's not how it happens. That's not how thinking happens. That's not how writing happens. It's a recursive process. It goes back and forth and over. The difference now is that we can just see that more readily, right? It's always been there. It's just now with digital media, and this is some of the work that I've done with students with things like cloud computing, Google Docs. You just see it from beginning to end. It always existed. It's much more transparent now. So to idealize the work of the writer as, well, we're taking away this space that existed where you were just in your head, and then you spilled it all out on the paper. It's again a fetishized or idealized version or view of what happens, or what the creative process is. And it's one that I've just never agreed with. I just don't think that's how thinking happens. Thinking happens like this, right? People wrestling with questions, having disagreements about things, having your own position refined, redefined, redirected, right? That's how thinking happens. And what we're seeing now is we can just more readily present that, right? You can present this map of an idea, as my students said.
Right.
But that's we don't want to say, well, the map is the final. That's all we need now. You just have these dots, and there you go. That's my paper.
Yeah.
That's not a paper, right? That's the rough draft, right? That's the beginning. This is, here you go. You're getting started. Some of the stuff will fall away. Some of it will become enriched as you go in this direction. But that's just the beginning, just like it was the beginning in a rough draft of a paper.
That's right, and it could be pretty amazing to write an essay, a traditional 5-page essay, with hyperlinks that would take you to the images, for example. And in a way, I can imagine that being a really useful thing. A useful experience for students to have. But what I would counter with is the ability to narrate a story without those links and without that visualization is itself another kind of experience.